This is 91.3 FM, WCAW in Worcester, Massachusetts, the Dr. Christian Radio of Horror program. And tonight on Radio of Horror, we have author of Interview with the Boogeyman, Benjamin Jeffries, on the show with us. Thank you for coming on the show with us, Benjamin.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Interview with the Boogeyman. Do you know him personally? Is he an old childhood friend of yours you've kept in contact with? You became an author?
I think we all know we all remember our Boogeyman. Yeah. The book, of course, is me meeting him is fiction, of course. But
yes.
I think we all remember our first Boogeyman, and I think it follows us around for most of our lives. We all remember that first time when we were scared of the closet door and stuff that was under the bed, and so there is a real link, that connects everybody with a Boogeyman at one point in their life.
I didn't suspect that you were like Christian Slater and you were meeting him in like some abandoned apartment building with a tape recorder. So that's not what I was thinking.
Just an abandoned farmhouse.
Just an abandoned farmhouse. Okay.
Yeah.
Tell some people who are not familiar with the book, as it just came out like last month, June 17th or something, so it's still very new. What the book is about and where you came up with the idea for it.
Schiffer Publishing, which is my publishing company that I've been going through for my last 3 or 4 books, they'd wanted me to kind of write up a pitch for a Slender Man book, and I just and I was like, Slender Man, that's a pamphlet. There's nothing to it. And I said, how about a book about the Boogeyman?
And that's also a copywritten character too.
I don't want to step on any toes without naming, who created him and stuff.
On top of the fact it's surrounded in controversy over 2 freaking kids killing their classmate because Slender Man and Lord Voldemort, yes, that Lord Voldemort, he should not be named, told them to kill their classmate. Whereas the Boogeyman doesn't have that reputation.
He really doesn't. He
shockingly
he'll scare the crap out of you, but he won't kill you.
But nobody is definitely running to the presses with the Boogeyman told me to do this or the Boogeyman is doing this. It's always kids and like the Boogeyman's in the closet. Oh, shut up and go to bed.
Yeah.
That's the end of the Boogeyman.
Pretty much.
But go on with what the process was behind the book and everything.
So I basically wrote him back. I said, well, Slender Man, he's one of these new urban myths that someone created at Creepypasta, and I said, how about something a little more detailed about the Boogeyman? And they said, well, go on, let me know what you have. And I think they were expecting more of an encyclopedia type of book. And when I first looked at it, I said, I got to do something different with this. I said, what if I really met him, and what if all of these creatures that are attributed to the Boogeyman were actually created by him? And so it started out like an encyclopedia, but I wanted to try something really different, so I just treated him as if he were an actual human character, flesh and blood character. And when I submitted my first draft, they didn't get it. Nobody got it. I think my editor went in 3 or 4 times trying to pitch it different ways, and I emailed the publisher directly. I said, just read the book. I said, you'll get it after you read it. Don't go by a pitch. So about a month after that, they actually got back to me and said, we're going full force with it. So they really kind of got behind it once they read it and they understood what I was trying to do. And and then they've released it, and it's a beautiful hardcover with a glow in the dark typeface on the front, and they're behind it 110%. So I'm really happy about that. It really is kind of there's a wraparound story where our narrator is talking to the Boogeyman, and he's gotten the Boogeyman's journal, and he's translating the Latin and trying to find all of these stories that are in this huge journal, and those stories basically make up the bulk of the book.
My first, and I would love to hear yours. my first encounter with the Boogeyman in any kind of form, and so I'm mainly talking about media, of course, was, do you remember a cartoon series called The Real Ghostbusters?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And
yes,
the Boogeyman, I think someone told me, is actually voiced by Frank Welker, a.k.a. the voice of Dr. Claw and Slimer and so many other things. Obviously, if you...
Frank Welker did everyone.
Everybody. And, of course, if you went to see a certain little independent movie that's in theaters right now called Transformers: The Last Night, he's the voice of Megatron again. I think he was the voice of Boogeyman that Ray talks like this, and it's like really wheezy, and he's got the big head and the cloven feet. And that, I think, I mean, memory is fleeting, especially as you get older. You know, I'm in my 30s, and just all the drugs I did back in the 90s just destroyed my memory. That is going back into my brain. That is the earliest memory I can think of the Boogeyman, and I don't think I ever actually was scared of the Boogeyman in the closet or under the bed because of that. And then there was an episode called The Return of the Boogeyman, which in my opinion was actually scarier because in that Egon almost dies falling off a building, and he has a mortality fear, and the Boogeyman uses that to resurrect himself through the real world from the nightmare world that he lives in. And I think after that, I was just never scared of the Boogeyman. You know what I mean? Because the Ghostbusters fought him. And I was like, the Boogeyman can't be that scary because the Ghostbusters fought him. When you're 8, 6 years old or whatever when that cartoon came out, that is how children deal with terror and fear that is make-believe, like the Boogeyman or creatures that, you know, cannot possibly exist, is by seeing your heroes and things that you look up to defeat them. You're like, I'm not afraid of that. The Ghostbusters defeated it. What was your earliest memory of the Boogeyman as a child?
You know, I was always into like the old Universal horror movies like Frankenstein, Dracula, and stuff like that. Nothing really scared me until I saw a movie that was made for television from 1973, I believe. It was Don't Be Afraid of the Dark. And anybody who's into horror should know that movie is terrifying, and I wasn't scared of anything until I saw that movie. And everywhere I went in that house, any dark corner, there were these 3 creatures just sort of waiting to grab my feet or, you know, trip me or try to drag me into the chimney like they did Kim Darby in that movie. But that movie was the first one that really scared the crap out of me. And those 3 creatures, for the longest time, became my Boogeyman. I was constantly looking out for those little whatever they were, and I watched it about I think it was about 20 years or so between viewings, and I watched it again. And I'm like, how is it that I was scared of this movie, and it still gave me the creeps? And I think maybe because I brought some of my childhood with me. Just
repeat the name of the movie once again. Kind of cut out for a second.
It was the original Don't Be Afraid of the Dark from 1973. It was a TV movie with Jim Hutton and Kim Darby.
Oh my God! You know what? I have still to this day never seen that because I can't find a copy of it, and I don't think it's on DVD or Blu-ray. And if it is, and I missed it, please stick a link in the description box below. If you stick a link to a pirated website, I will fucking report you to everything I can find because I hate piracy. But stick a link to an Amazon link. Okay.
You can find it on Amazon. Warner Archives burns them personally because they don't keep them in print because they're not.
Oh, okay.
Popular,
so that's even better then.
Warner Archives will actually burn one for you.
All right, then
order through Amazon.
Then I'll go to Warner Archives instead of Amazon because the Warner Archives people, which a lot of people will think are like, oh, it's Warner Brothers, they got billions of dollars and blah 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 blah. It's like, yeah, well, the Warner Archives is a completely separate part of the company, and yeah, they're owned by Warner Brothers, so they're like it's an umbrella, but that's still like really done by a very small group of people. Hence why your DVDs take a while to come in, and they're on some not to bosh anybody, but the DVDs themselves are kind of very low key quality discs.
Yeah.
So, but I'm glad you mentioned that because I think the last time I'd heard about that wasn't there like a Katie Holmes remake in theaters a few years ago?
Yeah, it was produced by Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was like little shadow demon creatures or something like that.
Yeah, they were like tooth fairies.
Exactly. That's right. Okay, so I am thinking of the right movie.
Yep.
And then there was not to get on a tangent in the media about the Boogeyman, but there was Mr. Boogedy, a Disney made-for-TV movie.
I think I remember hearing about that, yeah.
And then Return of Mr. Boogedy. And these were always shown around Halloween time on The Wonderful World of Disney on Sunday nights.
Right.
Yeah. And you can watch them both on YouTube. And the only reason I will say that is because someone told me that Disney didn't renew the copyright on a lot of their Wonderful World of Disney stuff. And that's why it's in public domain.
That's good to know.
Yeah, so you want to check it out. Okay, one of the cool things that about your book that struck me right in the beginning is the cover glows in the dark.
Yeah, that was a surprise to me. They never mentioned that when they were in the design phase. And it just showed up. The first copy showed up with a bottle of wine like they usually do. And there was a sticky note on the front of the book that said that the cover glows. It's so cool. And it really does. And it's kind of funny. On the back, there's an inscription that says, when you find the cover of this book glows in the dark, lock the doors and windows. It means the Boogeyman is watching, which I thought was great because I think that the book, I wrote it with kids in mind and young adults in mind. And even, adults, I think it's one of those books that I wrote that any kid who can read, can read and enjoy it. There's nothing too graphic. There's no swearing. There's nothing in it that's horrible, but there's some great stories that I loved writing, and folklore, myths, stuff like that I used to love reading when I was a kid that I hope some kids still do reading. And I've since heard some feedback from some people who bought my book and said my kids love it just as much as I do. So that hit pretty good, and I was very happy with that.
Where do you find the lore and the information about the Boogeyman? I mean, are you hitting the library? Is it own personal material? Are you citing? I haven't read through the whole thing, so I haven't gotten to the back yet.
That's fine.
Are you contacting scholars? I mean, where do you get the information from the Boogeyman from, other than let's say the internet?
I actually started out with my favorite stories when I was a kid, like Beowulf and Native American. Folklore, myths, and legends, of course. Like you had Mothman as well, and the Bunny Man, and then I started going even further back, and really the books that were written by Wilhelm Grimm and the Grimm brothers, the Grimm fairy tales, Hans Christian Andersen, have some really beautiful ties to that old Nordic folklore and Germanic folklore that is present and runs through every incarnation of the Boogeyman. So I really was able to trace his origins, if you will, back to the Netherlands, the old world, back in the days of Vikings and the Middle Ages, to where he actually became a name. I mean, he wasn't just a creature, he was a name. And from there, just kind of went to libraries, and I found a lot of old writings that had been stored online at academic websites that were very helpful. And just finding the old folklores, the old tales, before they became kind of bastardized by sensationalism.
I'm not sure exactly where you're located, but if you ever appear in New England, something for research that you would need, I recommend stopping by the Providence. I want to say it's the Providence, Rhode Island Library, Providence City Library. I don't know the exact name. They have in their white room, their clean room, and you can always. It's easily accessible to the public because it's the library. They have the original written manuscripts, original notes, original letters, original diaries of H.P. Lovecraft.
Oh, well, I was,
and apparently it is a clean room that you have to enter into because the stuff is preserved and paper obviously deteriorates.
I would never leave. That would be an amazing experience, man. Yeah, I'll tell you, I there was. The whole Cthulhu mythos kind of came up when I was writing, and I thought, that's not the Boogeyman. That belongs to someone else. And even so, the Cthulhu mythos belongs to H.P. Lovecraft, and it belongs in its own tome. So while there are kind of allusions to water beasts and old gods and demons and stuff like that in the book, there's no real allusion to the actual H.P. Lovecraft stuff, because you can't condense H.P. Lovecraft into a book like this and just have it be a footnote. That's epic stuff, and it belongs in its own books somewhere. Belongs to him.
Yeah, true. Just to also kind of sweeten that pot a little bit, up here in August, wow, it's actually next month, there is Necronomicon, an H.P. Lovecraft celebration. Yeah.
I think I'm going to have my fiance book my tickets for that.
It's like 4 days long. It is freaking awesome. It's not a convention like you go to like one convention center. It's like a celebration all over the city. Well, the center of Providence, let's just say. You know what I mean? Where like everything's in like walking distance. You can't get anywhere. You don't need to get anywhere by Uber or cab or bus or whatever. Everything is within walking distance of something else happening on the schedule.
Well, Leslie and I might have to get married early and go on a honeymoon. I think we're scheduled for May, but I think we're going to have to bump it to August just so we can do that as a honeymoon.
Absolutely. Sorry, let me start over. What is the first reference of the Boogeyman in history, in recorded history?
If you ask him, he kind of erupted from the cracks of the Dimmu Borgir lava field back at the beginning of time.
I have vampires and witches on speed dial. I don't have the Boogeyman. I'm sorry.
Well, I spent enough time with him, and that he's a little much to take, and sometimes he overstays his welcome. But I started off with Beowulf, and I kind of, that being the quintessentially the oldest piece of English literature that we have to date, I kind of started with that. And
you mentioned the Beowulf thing. Yeah,
the Beowulf and Grendel story was really a really good example of how the Boogeyman legend can proliferate. It started out as a Nordic tale, probably told around Viking campfires, and then it made its way to England, where someone actually thought to write it down. And an Englishman who wrote it down got credit for it. I mean, fortunately, he's remained anonymous up until this time. But when it comes down to it, I really think that Beowulf was the beginning of, and especially Grendel and Grendel's mother, was kind of the beginning of the whole monster that strikes at night kind of thing. After that, of course, you have all of these tales of werewolves and vampires kind of cropping up, and but I really kind of look at Grendel and Grendel's mother as being kind of the very first ones that are known as boogie-ish types.
What about wouldn't the devil be considered like the Boogeyman?
There's actually a funny story in the book about how the devil is different. When the Boogeyman, there's a preliminary interview that I did in the beginning of the book where I asked him about God and the devil and all that stuff, and he says he used to play pinochle with God, the devil, and Plato, and they were always kind of challenging each other to these different dares and stuff. And it was the Boogeyman that actually came up with the snake in the Garden of Eden, but the devil took credit for it. And so, I made a distinction right from the beginning that the Boogeyman wasn't the devil. He wasn't that. I mean, he had a different mission in life than the devil did, I think. And his mission was to terrify children, but in a way that they could conquer the fear and actually grow up. Because when you grow up, you stop seeing these boogeymen, you stop seeing these monsters. And if you're strong enough to withstand or defeat the boogeyman or stand up to the boogeyman, then you're strong enough to stand up to anything. And while he's there to terrify you, he's also there to empower you to become a better person, or a stronger-willed person, at least.
It's It's quite a fascinating book because it's definitely a subject that I think gets overlooked a lot because we're surrounded by so many other things in popular culture of monsters, mysticism, cryptozoology, and all sorts of stuff. And I think the Boogeyman is sometimes definitely forgotten about. I mean, there were God, I hate to bring it up, but there were 3 terrible Boogeyman movies. And when I heard they were making a Boogeyman movie, I was like, "Oh my god, that's gonna be so great!" And then I went to go see the first one. I was like, "Oh my god, this is so terrible."
Yeah, I kind of stayed away from it because it was PG-13. I was like, you can't do a PG-13 Boogeyman and make it scary. It's just, But I remember the original 1980 movie, The Boogeyman, that I think it was Uli Lumel did way back in the day, and I watched that waiting for the Boogeyman. I'm like, where's he at? Here's they're talking about a haunted mirror, I think. But
yeah, I think I remember. Yeah, I think I remember that too.
Yeah.
Or how about John Carpenter created his own Boogeyman? Was that the Boogeyman? And matter of fact, I believe it was Michael Myers.
Yeah.
And that's thrown around a lot in that movie, considering that he is the Boogeyman.
Yeah, the slasher movies definitely take advantage of the whole Boogeyman mythology, where they kind of take this thing that just lives on your fear, like Michael Myers and Jason, and even, of course, Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, I was going to say Freddy, but definitely I've seen all the Halloween movies, and again, memory is fleeting, but I swear, I think it's only the first one where they really make a point of calling Michael Myers the Boogeyman, especially little Tommy. Yep. He's just like, you can't kill the Boogeyman,
Yeah, that was the running theme. That was was it the Boogeyman? It was mentioned at least a dozen times, I think. And but yeah, it kind of disappeared after that first one.
Yeah, definitely. But man, I always remember that line. You can't. Was that the Boogeyman? As a matter of fact, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And just
one of the greatest lines in horror movie history.
Exactly. Or you can't kill the Boogeyman. And it's like, no, you can't, because the Boogeyman, I think, doesn't really exist so much as a physical form, unless you count, real life monsters, predators, things like that. We're not going to really get into that. We're talking about we're going to stay on the supernatural front of it all. But the Boogeyman will always exist in the fears of children going to bed at night in their closet and underneath their bed.
Mm-hmm. They definitely. Even the times leading up to bedtime, they just start getting the cold chills, and they start freaking out a little bit because they know the lights are going to go out, But they have their blankets. That's the Boogeyman's biggest pet peeve. He told me, he said, the blanket fort. Whoever invented the blanket fort is going to get it once he finds out who it was.
I think that person's long dead, probably.
Probably.
Or how about the teddy bear? What about the teddy bear?
Teddy bear he never mentioned, but the blanket fort he said was his biggest pet peeve, because most children's blankets are crafted by the hands of their mothers or grandmothers, and they're not picked out of a bin at Walmart. Most children's first blankets are made with love by the hands of their mother. So there's a kind of magic to that, where it just sort of, if they get under the blankets, he can't touch them.
Now, there's a great picture I have, because I mentioned the teddy bear thing. I can't remember. If I find it, maybe I'll send it to you in an email. There's a picture of a kid sleeping, and there's a little teddy bear holding a wooden sword, and this monster crawling up from underneath the bed on the bed to kill the kid. And I was like, that is freaking awesome.
I've seen that. That's an amazing picture.
I love that. I think it's like a meme too, like one of those little caption images that look like a poster art. So so I'm glad you've seen it, because that was like that was the Radio Horror Facebook page's top wallpaper picture. I forget what that thing's called. Anyway, but your book is fantastic. I can't wait to finish reading it. My kid's a little intimidated by that type of stuff. He likes like Godzilla and dinosaurs, which is great, but ghosts and goblins kind of freak him out still. So maybe when he's a little older, I'll introduce him to it. I do a podcast on the side called Supernatural Creatures and Lore, and we talk about the mythology, history, religion, and supernatural stuff of the monsters that appear on the TV series Supernatural. We talk about the real life lore behind where they came up with it, but we haven't done the Boogeyman yet, because I think they did the Boogeyman in an episode of Supernatural, but we're not there yet because we just finished season 1. So
gotcha.
But definitely check it out. I'll send you a link to it. It's on iTunes and stuff.
Sounds good.
But why don't you give away where people can contact you and also where they can get copies of Interview with the Boogeyman?
I'm available on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Target.com, and Walmart.com have had it too. You can find me on Facebook. Just search Benjamin S. Jeffries, and I'll be there. I got my personal page and my author page, so both should come up.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show with us, Benjamin.
Oh, it's been a blast, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate everything.